want to see the tides turning in our country, can I challenge you and encourage you? If the Lord could grab a hold of us in our family, you would see the tide in our politics turning.
The Hamilton Corner, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on American Family Radio.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Today, U.S. officials are meeting with Ukraine and other European allies to discuss a peace plan, and Vice President J.D. Vance spoke about the deal the U.S. has put forward.
I'm going to echo something Secretary Rubio said, which is, look, we've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians, and it's time for them to either say yes or for the United States to walk away from this process. And I think that we've put together a very fair proposal. We're going to see if the Europeans, the Russians, and the Ukrainians are ultimately able to get this thing over the finish line.
The Supreme Court heard arguments on Tuesday from parents who say young children can't be expected to separate a teacher's moral messages from their family's beliefs, raising the question of whether exposure to LGBTQ-themed storybooks in elementary classrooms constitutes coercion. The plaintiffs say Montgomery County Public Schools violated the First Amendment by denying opt-out requests for books that contradict their religious beliefs, even while allowing exemptions for other religious objections, such as books depicting Islam's Muhammad. Former prosecutor Andrew Cherkasky says this is about religious freedom and parental rights.
Well, it's about religious freedom and a parent's right to be able to control what their children ultimately are consuming at school, where it directly implicates those religious freedoms or those religious beliefs and ideals that they have. You have to remember that in schools all across America, including this school district in Maryland, they allow for students to opt out of things like the dissection of a frog, but you can't opt your children out of receiving literature in kindergarten regarding transgenderism, regarding any of these sexually based topics.
President Trump is endorsing the idea of giving up to $5,000 to mothers to help increase birth rates.
Mr. President, there are reports that you're considering doing something for moms across the country, giving them some kind of bonus so that they have child. Were you considering that? Or?
Sounds like a good idea to me.
But Maggie Anders of the Foundation for Economic Education doesn't agree.
While I wholeheartedly agree with the Trump administration that America is facing a fertility epidemic, I don't think a $5,000 baby bonus is really going to cut it. You know, some estimates put the average cost of raising a child in America at $23,000. By the time that child is 18, that's $414,000, not accounting for inflation or the cost of college tuition. Americans are facing a cost of living crisis. We're tired of being taxed to death, and we're tired of our dollar being devalued through wasteful government spending programs and Federal Reserve money printing. And I think this is going to make that problem worse.
The IRS investigated the First Baptist Church of Dallas. Robert Thornton has more.
As reported by Religion News Service, President Donald Trump told reporters last week that several pastors in attendance at a White House event said their churches were investigated by the IRS over the past 4 years. According to the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the group filed a complaint about First Baptist Church of Dallas in July of 2020, before the election and while Trump was still president. It focused on a visit by then Vice President Mike Pence. Here's Pastor Dr. Robert Jeffress directing comments to Pence at that service.
That when you have finished your term in 2024, we don't want you moving out of the West Wing. We just want you to move down the hall a few doors and continue to build on the legacy of the most faith-friendly president in history.
The Freedom from Religion Foundation claimed Jeffress's remarks amounted to an endorsement. Jeffress made these comments to AFN.
It's true at this faith leaders dinner. Last week, I was asked to relate to President Trump what our church had gone through in a several-year-long investigation by the Internal Revenue that cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars, but was ultimately resolved in our favor. It had to do with more than Vice President Pence.
I'm Robert Thornton.
A fast-moving wildfire still burning in New Jersey today. It forced thousands of people to evacuate and has temporarily closed a stretch of major highway. More news online at afn.net and on the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
Some chances come along once in a lifetime. When they do, you've got to be ready. AFA Action's Center for Judicial Renewal has such a chance to help the Trump administration make good choices, nominating men and women as Supreme Court justices and other federal judges. Your gift helps make that possible, and we'll give you a free Bible study by Stephen McDowell, God's Blueprint for Life, Liberty, and Property, as a thank you gift. Visit afaaction.net today. afaaction.net.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Today's Wednesday, April the 23rd, 2025. Thank you for listening to AFR. Joining me in studios is Ed Battagliano. Good morning, Ed.
Hello.
Wow.
Hello, me bucko.
Is that British?
It's British for a few minutes, and then it always turns into Russian. My accents when I start off,
they sort of slip.
Yeah, they do. Before you know it, I'll be
continent to continent.
I drink Diet Coke. Yeah. If he
can you sing in Russian?
Can I sing?
Play the
no.
Russian men.
Play the Russian national anthem. I love that national anthem. I love the Russian and the Canadian national anthem.
Yeah, you like it when those Russian men sing. That.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, those are like manly men.
That's manly.
Do you know the Russians are descended from Vikings? That's who settled that part of Europe.
So they've
Asia.
been invaders for a long time, haven't they?
I'll tell you, those are men. They're just manly men.
They just can't help themselves.
Yeah,
got to invade something.
Kind of like Italians are always surrendering.
I thought that was a French.
Well, we're related in that way.
All right. Well, in studio with us also is Fred Jackson. Good morning, Brother Fred.
Good morning.
What voices can you do?
Hey, by the way, man, Chris Woodward. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. If I can, just a second.
You can, Chris.
I need to wish my mom a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Mom.
Hey, what's your mom's first name?
Sheila.
Sheila. Hello, Sheila.
No, that was Australian.
Yeah,
I know. Well,
you slipped over to. Yeah, that was Crocodile Dundee right there.
I've had quite a bit of Diet Coke this morning, so
no telling what we're going to get from you.
I would buckle up if I were you.
You're going to have a Diet Coke with a stereotype. That's what it says on the wrapper there. Yeah.
Homies.
Yeah, there you go.
You guys are my homies.
Just the accent.
Yeah.
The accent.
With a stereotype, I missed that.
I'm not sure what Chris is talking about.
I don't either. I've not had enough Diet Coke.
I'm just being polite.
Okay, let's move on.
Pretending I understand.
I think we just move on.
Okay.
Move on down life's road. All right.
We do have Jenna Ellis at the bottom of the hour. So
she's not a stereotype, though.
She is not.
I think she's her own person.
Yes, she is.
So, yeah, we'll talk to Jenna Ellis at the bottom of the hour. I had something. We're going to get into the good, bad, and the ugly of the day.
Yep.
Something very interesting happened to me last night. I don't know if this has ever happened to y'all or not. Of course, I've lived in the same town for my whole life.
Yeah.
Tupelo. And except for like when I was a child.
College or.
Yeah, and college.
Yeah.
But, and like my first, I know nobody cares about this.
You're homegrown.
Yeah. 6 or 8 years we lived in another town, but in this area.
Yeah.
So, I'm sitting at a restaurant last night with my wife, Allison, and probably half of our grandchildren.
Yeah.
Like 6. And anyway, some of our family were having a meal, and I look over and across the restaurant, I glance over. You know, you just glance over there and I say, I know that guy from somewhere. You know, you ever had that?
Oh yeah,
yeah. So then but then I don't want to stare to where he stares,
yes.
And then I don't know him. And he goes, "Who's that freak over there?"
Yeah. Or what are you looking at?
Who's that weirdo over there staring at me?
Yeah.
You know. So I still look over there again. I go, I know that guy. That guy is David.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell his last name, David, and David from my college years. Okay. And so I was figuring up the last time I saw him. Well, I'll tell you what I did. I said I know that's him, but I'm 95% sure, but it could be his evil twin for all I know.
Because you walk all the way over there and it's not him.
Right.
It's the walk of shame.
I've had that happen to me before.
Yeah.
Hey, aren't you? Do you know? Yeah. Aren't you? Anyway, so we're about to leave the restaurant.
Yeah.
Okay. And I said, Allison, I said, look over there, because she knows she knows. I said, look over there. I said, before we leave, is that who I think it is? She goes, I think it is too. She said, let's go over there. So we walked over there, and sure enough, it was a fella that I went to college with that I hadn't seen in 42 years.
Wow. And so let me ask you this. When you were looking at him, did you think, I think that's David, and man, is he old?
Well,
because that's true of you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he had grayed and wrinkled and all those things that happen to all of us as we go down the path there. But he's
did he remember you?
Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah. He did. And we hugged. And after all these years, I didn't realize he had been in prison 5 times. Wow, I had no idea. He had
after college. He had chosen poorly.
Just had a loser life. But I didn't tell him that. I thought it, but no, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
He had a good life, but 42 years, you wouldn't think. And what are the chances we're going to be because he didn't live here anymore.
Oh my goodness.
He did for a little while, but he moved back to where he was another state. So he would just happen to be at that restaurant. But 42 years.
That's
amazing. So we reminisce.
You recognize him after 42 years. That's a lot of
no. He didn't recognize me.
Yeah.
At first he didn't. Of course, I had drastically changed, like in long hair.
For the better.
Long hair to no hair.
Yeah.
Anyways, that was a unique and fun experience.
Yeah, sure.
And so, but we reminisced about, our the year or so we didn't we played board games and card games and didn't go to class, and almost cost me my college career.
That was resulted in your dad sitting you down.
Oh yeah. He got my grades.
Yeah.
Christmas semester.
Yes.
And he said,
I remember you telling that.
Basically, he said to me, "We ain't doing this."
Yeah. You either
he
buckle
said,
down.
I never will forget it. He said, my dad, because they were bad, like 2 C's, 2 D's, and an F. That was good for me to not have gone to class half the time.
Yes.
So he goes, my dad says, I never will forget. You know those moments you don't forget in your life?
Yeah, no, I know.
So my dad says to me, got your grades today. And of course, they're coming. They're coming in the mail.
Yeah.
All right. And so doomsday is going to happen sometime during Christmas holiday.
Right.
So he goes, he said, I got your grades today. Of course, then what's that? The gallows is after that. So he goes, I'm not paying for this. You know that. He said, I'll give you one more semester.
Yeah.
If your grades don't come up, and he had low expectations of me anyway, so it wasn't a real high bar. You know what I'm saying? For me now, for my brother, he did, but not for me. He said, you can make your living 2 ways, with your back or your brain.
Right.
He said you go to college to make a living with your brain.
Yeah.
So you don't have to break your back.
Right.
He said there's nothing wrong with working with your back or your hands. That's an honorable profession, but you don't go to college to work in the field.
Yes.
Okay, or whatever like that. So he was saying, if you want to do hard labor, then there's no reason for me to pay for this.
Yes.
So, that makes sense now.
Oh, yeah.
Back then it was like, so you're going to be killjoy here.
Yeah.
I'm thinking to myself, so I can't go party anymore. I didn't know I wasn't a heavy drinker or nothing
Yeah,
that, but you know what I'm saying?
Not going to class.
Do what I want to.
Goofing off.
Do what I want to.
Yeah.
First time away from home, nobody's watching, no cell phone back then.
Right.
You play poker every night if you want to. Nobody cares. But they do care when your grades come in.
Yes, they do.
Anyway, that was a life lesson for me. He said, I'll never forget him saying, you can make a living with your back or your brain.
Yeah.
So anyway, he gave me one more semester, and I
buckled down.
I redeemed myself.
Yes.
And ended up graduating.
Yes.
Not with honors, but graduating. Anyway, I don't know why I went off that, except when you don't see somebody for 42 years, and then you see them, and it's like, wow, anyway.
Yeah.
You had similar?
Oh, yeah. No, I'll save it for another day. I was going to tell my
you got to tell
skipping class in college.
You got to tell. All we got to talk about, Chris got to talk about over is the stock market.
Oh man, I'm
and Dow Jones.
I've got it primed.
Dow Jones is bipolar.
I'll give you the very quick version.
Okay.
My third year of college, I met a young lady. We wound up getting engaged. Okay, but
this in Boston?
No, this was in New Mexico.
Okay,
where my family had moved, and fortunately, she broke it off. And good Christian lady. She has since gone to be home with the Lord. But I wound up marrying my wife. It all worked out. But anyway, that year, I would skip class. I had a lunchtime class, and I would skip a class. It was a sociology class, so we could have lunch together. 3 times a week or whatever. And so the whole semester, I'm just goofing around. No, we didn't do anything wrong. We were both Christians, but I was in love with this girl, and I was skipping class so we could have lunch. And so we come up towards the final exam, and he said what the final exam was going to be about. I had not been taking notes. I didn't know anybody in class, so I couldn't ask for their notes. And so I go and check out of the library 3 or 4 books on Emil Durkheim or whoever it was about. And so I took the test, and the next class, I did go to the next class, and he said, everyone did very well except for one student who almost made it seem like he never attended class. Because I have no idea where he got all these answers. It was a take-home test. That's what it was.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm scrambling around trying to research. And so he said it's almost as if he had never been in class when he handed me my test. I got a.
Did you pass?
I did. I barely passed.
Barely passed.
But that was just stupidity.
It was you laugh about it now.
You laugh about
Back
it now.
then, it was
Man, I was scared.
Not funny.
What my dad would say.
When he get your grade, did they pay for?
Yeah. No, yeah. And the semester before, I had gotten a C in. Just as one quick thing.
Sure.
Just one quick story. It was my first year as a Christian, and I took a class. I had to take a science class, so I took a class on physics of light. And it was very hard for me. I wound up getting a C, which I explained to my dad. I said, it's physics, But for the final exam, I didn't study, and I went into class, and I prayed. This is how you misuse the Bible. I said, Lord, your word says whatever I ask in faith. And each question on the test, kids, do not try this at home. For each question on the test, I would just close my eyes and say, Holy Spirit, tell me which letter to. I filled it out, and I got the highest grade on the test. I completely.
But you wouldn't encourage people to do that.
Good grief, no.
And
what were you thinking?
You just all right.
Anyway, I'm sure there are times to our listeners that God looked at you and said, I'm helping you out.
Right.
But this
you
is
don't
the
deserve
dumbest
it.
thing. Yeah.
All right. Well, all right.
I got to tell you, it's stories like these that terrify me as the parent of somebody in high school and starting to think about college and where she's going to go and whatever else.
Man, I was so glad college was over.
Yeah.
I like my college years, but I had like PTSD. What do you call that?
PTSD?
Yeah, on tests for like 5 years. After you know how you
took
that?
Tests after you got out of college?
I didn't test. Like you wake up in the middle of the night.
Yes,
you wake up 3 years after you graduated. You wake up in the middle of the night going, I got to test them. I've already.
We have a test today.
You're in class. All right. Speaking of the stock market.
Oh, thank you so much,
Chris. What happened there?
Well, let me tell you this. We need to keep a check on stocks today because, according to the Wall Street Journal this morning, as of about 45 minutes ago, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that the White House may be considering slashing Chinese tariffs to de-escalate the trade war. It says the Trump administration is considering slashing its steep tariffs on China imports, in some cases by more than half, in a bid to de-escalate tensions with Beijing that have rolled back global trade and investment, according to people familiar with the matter. President Trump has not made a final determination, the people said, adding that the discussions remain fluid and several options are on the table. The key points you need to take away here, folks, is that if this is true, here's how it may roll out. Tariffs could come down to roughly 50 to 65%. It would be a tiered approach considered.
Are you talking about China?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
This is the one where Trump has said, we're going to hit them hard
China's
because they've been hurting us.
Okay.
Yes. Now, I bring all this up because, much like yesterday, which, by the way, your 401k did pretty good yesterday for most people listening. And what you need to know right now is that these stocks are still up right now with hours to go. But the Dow is up 840, the NASDAQ 585, the S&P 500. If this is true, investors will like this, whether it's right or wrong, and we could see a positive finish again today on Wall Street.
Brad, what do you think about this?
Well, there is a mood change in the last couple of days. Yesterday, President Trump, remember he said a few days ago he doesn't like the Federal Reserve Chairman,
right,
Mr. Powell.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I'm not going to fire him. Don't worry, I'm not going to fire him.
Right.
Then the White House yesterday, Caroline Leavitt, during her briefing yesterday, said, we have now 18 proposed settlements with 18 different countries.
Mm-hmm.
Vance, Vice President Vance, is in India. He was saying yesterday, we're going to work out a great deal with India.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm not sure whether the chaos that we've seen over the last couple of weeks because of the tariff war, trade war, what it's done to stock market, but it appears there's been a shift, at least, that and the line coming out of the administration, everything's going to be all right. And this Wall Street Journal story this morning on the China tariffs, yesterday President Trump says, I'm great friends with the Chinese leader Xi. I mean, we're just great friends. And so all of this is pointing towards, and some people are going to say, told you, art of the deal.
Yeah.
Go out there, President Trump is punching and punching and punching, and now he's stepping back and saying, kumbaya.
Yeah.
Everything's going to be okay.
Okay. I can tell my... So the stock market's up now because the White House is what?
They're considering slashing China tariffs to de-escalate the trade war. Also, Trump said he's not going to fire Powell.
Yep.
How do I say this without ticking off all President Trump's fans that listen to our show?
Yeah.
How do I say this? Because I too am a fan.
Yeah.
And have applauded President Trump many, many times, and I love to think that every day it's been Christmas.
Yeah.
for
right.
for his first couple of months of his administration. Now here comes the.
But
you need to turn the radio off if you get your feelings hurt because
you're easily triggered.
If you're easily triggered. I don't, and maybe I'm sure he has a plan, but I don't understand why you can't believe what he says one day to the next.
Publicly, yeah. What he publicly says.
What he publicly says. Because he changes his mind on a dime. And I'm not saying he doesn't set out every morning to go, I think I'm going to contradict what I said yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't think he does that. I just do think it's back to the art of the deal. To practice the art of the deal, you have to manipulate people. And you have to
keep them off balance.
You have to keep them off balance. That's the way the world works. That's the way a lot of business works, negotiation and all that. Not let them see all your cards.
Right.
So, but when you do that as president, it causes great volatility and uncertainty, and that's why the stock market's been all over the place and the economy. And I've heard a lot of people say, I don't understand what Trump's doing with these tariffs. Well, I don't either, because I don't understand them very much. I do get the concept that President Trump's talking about when he says, we need to equal the playing field because our people we trade with tariff us and then we don't tariff them, and that's not fair.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm with you right there, brother. But sometimes your actions have unintended consequences. And if you do things too fast, too hard, too quick, too broad, then you get a reaction that you didn't expect, I guess I could say. Now, President Trump did say there's going to be some rough waters ahead when when he's doing all these tariffs. But here's my bottom line point: if the White House today is saying they're going to do something that they said they wouldn't do last week, and it caused all this chaos, for what purpose? That's my question. I'm not making an accusation against President Trump. I guess that'll play out in the coming days and weeks. But if the White House has said we're not changing anything, this is hard and fast, we're putting 150% tariff on all things China, and now it looks like it's going to be not going to work politically because Americans are going to have to pay a lot more, and then he backs down. Well, then say I back down. Because of course, he's never said that before, right?
Right.
It's because this is not going to work. Do you understand what I'm?
Yeah.
Am I making myself?
No, I agree. Here's the thing I would say. Nobody elected me president, but and
you're not running either.
And I'm not running.
I tried to talk you into it. Yes. I said, you're a DEI guy.
Yeah.
You're half Greek, half Italian, but you're fully American.
Yes.
I was going to be your campaign chairman.
I was going to be a good DEI president.
Go ahead.
No, so nobody's asked me for what I'm about to say, and I don't know whether it would work. And I'm certainly not Trump. Trump, as I've said, is a generational individual. You don't see individuals like Donald Trump, but probably once every 50 or 75 years. So he is unique, and I think God is using him in a number of levels. I would have preferred to see, so this is just my opinion, that President Trump, when he came into office, start off, and he has, doing the things he said he would do with regards to immigration and all those things. And then, rather than just start slapping tariffs every which way you could, okay, I would have picked 2 or 3 countries, and I would have said, okay, we are going to now try to balance our trade deficit. Last year was over $1 trillion, and we're starting with these 3 countries, and we are going to work things through, but we're not doing this anymore. So the rest of you, get ready, start thinking about what you can do, because we're going to come into everybody. And I think that approach would have been far safer in terms of almost overturning the world economy and the stock market. Is just lay it out and say, listen, we're not doing this anymore. So, and I personally would not have started with Canada and Mexico. I think that was a mistake. They are our neighbors and two of our closest allies. I would have waited on them, but nobody asked me, and I didn't get elected. But that's what I would have preferred to see.
Fred?
I think at the end of the day, this was all intentional by the president. I think he went out there and he threw the ball hard.
Come on, with China?
With China.
And with everybody else?
And with
but
everybody
now he's
else.
backing down.
Well, some would see it that way, but he would say it worked because I'm going to get out of this what I wanted. That's what.
So you think there's back channel discussions?
I think that's been that way all the way along.
We're still going to have tariffs.
Does this article say what America does America get what Trump wanted?
I don't see that in those exact
What
words.
does it say?
Well, basically, tariffs could come down to between roughly 50% and 65%. So we're still going to tariff them. It's just not going to be the full-on 100% plus.
I guess I'm asking why the back off.
Well, according to the source that the Wall Street Journal interviewed, it's to de-escalate tensions with Beijing.
But he escalated them.
Right, that have impacted global trade and investment, which is why stocks.
Well, I escalate them, then I de-escalate them, and I get credit.
Yeah. Well, the only thing,
am I the only one?
No, the only thing. But see, there's a lot we don't know. So if in escalating through backdoor channels, they were discussing, and Xi Jinping of China said, "All right, we'll come to the table, but you need to drop this."
Okay.
This,
well, if that happens, then I'll
Right.
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. But right now, it seems like
if nothing changes going forward, then it looks like a bluff.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
And he got called.
We'll be back momentarily. Stay with us.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildman.
From my high school days, I recall a poem about a man by the name of Paul Revere. Do you remember how it began? Listen, my children, and you shall hear of the midnight ride of Paul Revere. Now, those may not be the exact words, but they remind us of that poem which we had to memorize. There was another person who made a similar ride during that War of Independence. I doubt that you've ever heard of her. Her name was Sybil Ludington. She was only 16 years of age the night her father received a message that the British had just destroyed a neighboring city and advancing toward their home. Sybil volunteered to ride through the countryside in the middle of the night to warn other residents of the approaching enemy and to call them to arms in defense. All night Sybil rode, going from farmhouse to farmhouse, warning the farmers that British soldiers were advancing and telling them to join in the preparation for battle. When one compares these two rides, he discovers that the poet perhaps did an injustice by writing of Paul Revere. For Paul Revere rode only 10 miles in his famous ride, yet Sybil Ludington rode about 40 miles, and her ride was far more effective. The comparison points out something we need to remember in life. It isn't always the person who does the most good who gets the greatest acclaim. Many have been the number of people who have made outstanding and lasting contributions to society whose name is known by only a few. Don't think that the contribution you make isn't too important simply because your name isn't spread across the country in the mass media. For despite what we think, those who make the headlines are not the only ones who contribute to the good of mankind. More often than not, they aren't even the major ones. If fate should happen to give you the reward of public recognition for the good you do, well and fine. But if not, just remember that your contribution is in no way diminished simply because the world does not know your name. After all, the reason we do the good which we do isn't to gain public recognition. The reason we do it is because we know what we should do. In fact, a person who gets angry because he fails to get public recognition for something he has contributed to society really isn't a person who needs publicity. Above us, keeping watch over us, is one who sees the good we do. He isn't necessarily impressed by the headlines, but he is impressed when we do the best we can with what we have to do with. And it is his recognition, not the public's, which really matters after all is said and done. While the world may not know your name, just remember that he does.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildman, a production of the American Family Association.
Search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Psalm 139, 23, and 24.
American Family Radio. This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to today's issues here on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. I'm Tim. Ed is with me, and Fred's with me, and Chris. Also, we thank you for listening to American Family Radio. Well, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and the United States Supreme Court are at loggerheads, seemingly, about what to do on the issue of deportation of illegal immigrants. And it's kind of confusing for the public, I think, trying to understand and sort this out. And So we've asked Jenna to come on. Jenna Ellis, host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning, heard on American Family Radio 7 to 8 o'clock Central Time each weekday morning, and host of the on-demand podcast found on afr.net, where Jenna does deep dives into various and sundry topics that you will find of interest. And so we'll let her talk about that as well. But good morning, Jenna.
Good morning. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, are you driving?
I am driving, but at the moment I am stopped. So if
Okay.
I sound a little different than I normally am on radio, it's because I'm on my car's Bluetooth.
Okay, well, I don't want to put you at risk or anything like that. That's what I'm saying.
Sorry we interrupted your trip to Walmart, or
now they got a
I
Publix
know.
in Florida.
I know. I got Better Homes and Gardens. That whole collection from Walmart, I'm just saying, it's pretty fantastic. So.
Wow.
All right,
Better
so
Homes and Gardens.
then
I
we'll
wanna
get
go
right
there.
to the point here, Jenna. What about this? The Supreme Court had a 7-2 decision the other day, which against what the president is doing overall. That's what I got from it. Now, but it wasn't a real decision in the sense that it wasn't a court case. Can you explain what's going on here?
Yeah, so there are a number of cases and a number of opinions from the Supreme Court, and so it is confusing because there was also another one that talked about this kind of 60-day window for self-deportation, and then the 7 wasn't a total opinion on the merits. And so a lot of this is confusing, but the bottom line is that the Supreme Court is wrestling basically with the issue generally of whether people who have come here illegally, so they've already broken the law, get the protections of due process from the Constitution. And as J.D. Vance, I think, very rightly said in a pretty lengthy ex-post on social media, that when you're talking about due process, you literally need to talk about what type of process is due or owed to a particular individual. And so people who have come here illegally and actually have no status, they're the same thing as a break-in or a squatter in a home. You shouldn't have to go through an eviction process in the same way you would a tenant if you're a landlord, for example. So when the Supreme Court is attaching due process rights to people who are here illegally, in my view and in most conservative constitutionalist views, if they come across the border illegally, then they're basically stealing due process rights and claiming, well, I should have my day in court and have adjudication and have all of these rights attached when they're not American citizens and they have no claim for any type of status, whether permanent or temporary, like a student visa status would even give some other element of due process. So overall, what people need to take away from this whole conversation and all the litigation is that the question is becoming, what type of process in court do these illegal aliens have a right to under our constitutional framework?
So the 7-2 decision the other day, it was 7-2, right? Mm-hmm. With only Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito dissenting. That was not a permanent decision. That was a temporary decision, right?
Right. So it didn't reach the full merits, is my understanding of that case.
Right.
And and so it was basically skeptical of whether Trump's deportation notices comply fully with due process. And so much of this, again, is not saying that Trump can't ultimately deport these illegals. It's just saying, does his administration have to abide by specific process in order to accomplish that?
Jen, it's Fred here. Just listening to your explanation and bringing in the comparison of someone breaking into your home and then expecting due process before we can remove them from the house. But I think I heard you saying these are people who broke into our home, this country, illegally. Therefore, they don't have rights for so-called due process. Would you treat a person who is in the country on a student visa or a green card differently? Do they have some right to due process versus the person who broke into the country?
Yes, absolutely. No, do they have full citizenship rights? No. But again, this is what process is due. Well, if you are here on a student visa, then that means that you have gone through the process to obtain one prior to entering the country. So so immigration law actually does treat two buckets of people basically very differently. And it depends on whether you entered the country legally. And even if you are a holdover, your student visa expired and you're still here, basically illegally, but you came legally, then the court will treat you differently anyway, compared to people who came here and that initial contact with the United States was here illegally. And so for someone who has a student visa, if they're subject potentially to deportation, they have more process that is due. If you are a permanent resident, even more heightened because it's not a temporary status. It is a permanent residency. And so there are rights attached to that by virtue of that whole application process and that agreement basically with the United States and that individual that you have a green card, then that does entitle you to more process before you could be removed. And then, of course, full citizenship is an entirely different category.
So, Jenna, is that what, when the term is used, similarly situated, is that what we're talking about when we're talking about due process? That the person who is renting an apartment, the person who is a squatter, and the person who breaks in, even though all three people are in the apartment, they're not similarly situated in terms of the law. Is that what that means, that phrase?
Yes. And so that's a legal term of art that basically means by comparison. And so people who are similarly situated may mean that not all of the facts of their cases are identical, but in terms of the legal question at issue, they're similarly situated in terms of what needs to be adjudicated, what process needs to happen. They would be similarly situated. So someone, for example, who has a 6-month lease versus a 12-month lease, if they are looking for process for eviction purposes, for example, they would be similarly situated in the sense that they both have a leasehold. And they would not be similarly situated to someone who is a squatter or who came in on an Airbnb rental, for example, that doesn't have a lease term, just has a temporary contract. So when we're talking about people who are similarly situated, it means with respect to the legal question at issue. And for purposes of this discussion, people who are here legally, whether it's student visa, green card, full citizen, they're not similarly situated with respect to deportation and due process as people who came illegally.
Okay. Jenna, do you know, and maybe this isn't known, where this goes next? I mean, go ahead.
Well, I think that the Trump administration is going to continue to deport. They will continue to push this as far as they can go. The litigation will also continue. And so the question, I think, for the Trump administration is when they're looking at some of these lower district court judges, are they going to abide by those opinions or basically ignore those opinions until it gets to the Supreme Court? And that's a fascinating legal question. But I think where this goes from here is that there's going to definitely be more litigation, and hopefully, ultimately, the U.S. Supreme Court will recognize that people who came here illegally are not entitled to, in my opinion, due process at all, or any kind of process. But even if they are entitled to process, the very bare minimum to simply recognize, okay, there's a court finding that you came here illegally. That's all we need, but you're subject to deportation. The problem is that the court has now told the Trump administration, you can't do mass deportations. You have to look at this on a case-by-case basis. That takes hours and hours and hours, and it's a way to bulk up the process so that there's not enough time to review each of these individual cases for even just the hundreds of thousands of people that came in during the Biden administration. So that's going to be another outstanding legal question. And I think from here, we just have to wait and see what both the administration and the Supreme Court decides.
Gotcha. All right, Jenna Ellis joining us right now. So Jenna Ellis in the Morning is heard each weekday here on American Family Radios from 7 to 8 o'clock Central Time. And then the on-demand podcast is weekly at afr.net, afr.net. The on-demand podcast is hosted by Jenna. What are you going to be talking about this week?
Yeah, speaking of the Supreme Court, we're doing a deep dive into parental rights and the case that was argued yesterday in front of the Supreme Court as far as exposure by public schools for young children to LGBTQ content that parents object to, and why, in my view, this is not just a religious freedom issue. This comes back to fundamental pre-political parental rights. So we're going to be doing a deep dive into that topic.
Okay. That's at afr.net. You can click on the podcast section there. It's easy to find. And then Jenna's show called On Demand, hosted by Jenna Ellis, and the topic is the one she just described. All right, Jenna, back on the road. Thank you.
All right.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye-bye. That's Jenna Ellis joining us from Central Florida. Hurricane-free today. The hurricane-free day.
Season starts June 1st.
Yeah, Central Florida they don't get it like the coast do. They're for the hurricanes. You said what now?
The hurricane season starts June 1st and then runs until
November.
It pretty much stops. Yeah. There was one in 2005, 2006 is when it went like past Christmas. And they ran out of names. They just started doing like Greek letters. Hurricane Theta.
Epsilon.
Yeah, there you go. So they started sounding like fraternity brothers. So many.
All right, so thanks to Jenna there for joining us. You're listening to this radio program, and it's called Today's Issues here on the American Family Radio Network. You want to send us an email? You can do so at comments@afr.net, comments@afr.net. Next story, Chris.
I do want to mention, at least for a moment, that case that she ended the discussion with, the topic that she's going to be discussing in future installments of her show. I mentioned this on the show yesterday, and the reason why is because the parents were going into the Supreme Court to make their argument. Arguments have taken place. Now we have kind of the reaction or the coverage of what justices had to say and all that stuff.
You might real quickly tell the folks who don't know
yes.
the case. What was it about?
This is a case called Mahmoud v. Taylor. It is from Christian, Muslim, and Jewish parents out of Montgomery County, Maryland. This interreligious coalition of parents say that the Montgomery County Board of Schools there took away their opt-out options and included their kids in instruction time that involved LGBTQ books. And these are like radical books like Uncle Bobby's Wedding and How I Feel Today and Prince and Night, A Love Story, these kinds of radical LGBTQ books. So the Christian, Muslim, and Jewish parents say that Montgomery County Schools took away their opt-out. They want that back. And interestingly enough, even Justice Kagan, a liberal justice nominated to the court by one Barack Obama, took issue with these books. Don't take my word for it. Clip 6.
I, too, was struck by these are, young kids, picture books, and on matters concerning sexuality. I suspect there are a lot of non-religious parents who weren't all that thrilled about this. And then you add in religion, and that's, even more serious.
Now, one other thing that really stood out in terms of the news coverage and the arguments yesterday, the left has tried to make this about book banning and hateful people that don't want kids reading LGBTQ books. But even Justice Brett Kavanaugh was able to confirm that parents just want the opt-out. That it's not that they can't read these books. It's not that kids can't have the books, touch the books, look at the books, whatever. Parents just want the opt-out back. Clip 7.
Just to be clear, your position in this case is that you're not seeking to alter the instruction in the classroom or what's the content of the classroom. You're only seeking not for these children to be forced to remain in the classroom, correct?
Exactly.
Now, one other thing that really stood out yesterday, Teachers Union leader Randy Weingarten appeared on Fox News Channel of all places and said things like, quote, "These would not be the books I would be reading to kids who are 4 to 6 years old."
And she's president of the American Federation.
Yes, very liberal. And for her to say that on Fox News Channel, I think pretty much shuts the door on this case, which is why.
Has she been drinking?
Not that I'm aware of.
Because
that
that doesn't sound like her at all.
It does not. It does not. But I have to bring that up.
A couple lunchtime martinis sound like to me.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, she was being interviewed by Fox, which, to the best of my knowledge, is the first time that she has been interviewed on Fox News.
Yeah.
She did a very lengthy interview with Marsha McCollum yesterday, and I was shocked at that statement. But
what we just heard.
Yeah, I was shocked by what she said. These are not the type of books. I understand why parents would be
They
concerned.
must be really bad.
Oh, they
I
are.
heard her say that. You know what I'm saying?
They paint homosexuality, transgenderism in a very these books in a very positive light. And keep in mind, this school district, Montgomery County School District, wants kids as young as 4 years old to be exposed. This is not books on a shelf. These are teachers reading these books to these students.
Okay, let me tell you another thing here. Just put the Supreme Court argument aside that these parents are wanting the right to opt out. They need to take over that school board.
Yeah.
They need to...
Parents, you mean?
Yeah, they need to... Those who are opposed to what we've just been talking about here, these pornographic books being...
I don't think these are all pornographic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they're not pornographic in the sense of graphics.
Right. Yeah.
But they are they're advocating and promoting homosexuality and bisexuality and transgenderism and all those things, the LGBTQ, to small children.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
What grades are we talking about here?
Kindergarten through third.
Elementary.
It's like K4.
Okay, it shouldn't be too hard to rally the parents in that school district to get the school board to get these books out. And if they don't get the books out, then you get that school board out. And maybe they are trying this. Maybe there's a dual track here.
It is a very liberal county. I will say that. So that may be you're
more liberal than Randy Weingartner.
Well,
wow.
I have a different
yeah.
different take on why Randy Weingarten might be saying that what she said. But Montgomery County, if I'm not mistaken, this is a county that if I've got the right Montgomery County, that wants to hand out condoms even to grade schoolers. I mean, this is a very pro-sexual revolution county. So what I'm saying is,
I got you.
The percentage of parents who want to see the school board change might not be large enough to vote all these whack jobs off.
This is San Francisco East.
Yes, and Maryland generally is fairly liberal on cultural issues. But I do want to just mention that I'm not sure that Randy Weingarten is suddenly becoming reasonable on these issues. I think she is, and others on the left are starting to see that the tide has turned somewhat, and that going 100% pro-trans is not a winning formula if you're the Democratic Party, which the American Federation of Teachers is absolutely in bed with. And so, and also I think there's some worry amongst public schools and teachers unions that more and more parents are going to jerk their kids out of school and homeschool or send them to Christian schools, and they could wind up seeing a continuation of the drain of students in public school.
To give people more of the experience that was Randy on Fox News with Martha McCallum, we have
Weingartner or Weingarten?
Weingarten.
Weingarten.
Okay, Weingarten, like a wine garden.
Basically,
it's Garten. It's T-E-N.
Yeah.
Weingarten.
I'm just
okay.
southernizing.
Just so people who don't follow this closely, she's the #1 spokesman for the teachers unions in the country.
Yes.
Because her organization represents more public school teachers than any other. True?
Yes.
Maybe the NEA might be up there with it,
Okay.
the National Education Association. But she is the one that I see the most representing teachers.
That's who we're talking about.
It was a very lively discussion that lasted almost 15 minutes, and I'll post the link to the entire video on our Today's Issues Facebook page so that you too can see what I witnessed for 14 minutes and 51 seconds yesterday. But for the time being, here's a 44-second excerpt between Martha and Randy. Clip 8.
I say this as someone who is a gay person who understands that we have to actually make sure that families are respected and families are safe and kids are safe and that differences are acknowledged and differences are embraced. But, once you get a case like this where, parents are uncomfortable about what is being read to their kids in a classroom, this is something that has to be dealt with in a local level. not in the Supreme Court. And so parents have rights, and they should have rights in terms of what is being taught in classrooms.
You have
Actually,
very,
Martha,
very difficult
Martha, sweetheart, listen to me.
Please don't call me sweetheart.
It actually does. I'm sorry. My bad.
Randy, I didn't know this until just now. This is why this show exists. Randy Weingarten, I didn't know she was a lesbian.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well,
that even adds to this.
That adds because she said as a gay person, LGBTQ.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
that's why we're here.
That's why we're here.
The next story, Chris.
So the head of the American Federation for Teachers is a lesbian. Now, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with gay people working, but in terms of not that there's anything wrong with that.
If you have to say that there's nothing, not there's anything wrong with that, then you really believe there is something wrong with that.
I thought you were making a Seinfeld
No,
reference.
the point I was trying to make, I'm surrounded by wise guys. All right, I have no problem with LGBTQ people having a job, but if you're going to have a job that helps to determine public policy for schools and our kids, then it does matter if you have a lesbian over a teachers union when we're discussing whether to have these books.
Right.
So that does concern me. But if you're working at the local Chipotle, I don't care.
In Mexico City.
In Mexico City.
Yes.
All right.
In other news,
3 minutes left here, Chris.
In other news, the list of states fighting President Trump and his executive order barring males from female sports, the list of states fighting him is growing.
Okay.
Minnesota is now on that list because on AFN.net you will see a story of how Democratic Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison has filed a lawsuit against President Trump seeking to block his administration from acting against Minnesota in the way it's taking on Maine under a federal push to ban dudes from female sports. I have some audio from Keith Ellison if you're interested.
That's the AG there?
It sure is.
The Wackadoodle?
Yes.
Wackadoodle AG?
Clip 10.
I'd like to announce that I'm suing the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, and the United States Department of Justice. Here is the opening line of our lawsuit. Minnesota brings this lawsuit to stop President Trump and his administration from bullying vulnerable children in this state. In January and February, President Trump issued a series of executive orders targeting transgender people. One in particular banned transgender girls and women from participating on sports teams with other girls and women. Complying with the sports executive order from the president would violate Minnesota Human Rights Act.
All right, that's just crazy.
Yes, at least one person in government in Minnesota agrees with Trump here. And I say that based on the fact that House Speaker Lisa DeMuth of Cold Spring, Minnesota, backs Trump's position and disagrees with Ellison.
Continues to be a loser for Democrats. I don't know why this guy is, he must really be a true believer that dudes who say they're girls are girls. That's the way he spoke right there.
Yes.
Yep.
And instead of saying President Trump is trying to protect young women in athletics and their privacy, by the way, in gyms and changing areas and showers, he's saying he's framing it as no, Trump's bullying transgendered kids.
Right.
Yep. So it's just your worldview. But these people like Keith Ellison right there, he's the AG of Minnesota. You know, I wouldn't be. Once Trump learns about this, he'll probably give Minnesota to Canada. You know what I'm saying?
Or he's going to slap him with a tariff.
Canada.
It's a Minnesota
Canada
tariff coming your way.
How they on this issue in Canada? How is this playing out?
The Liberal Party, the ruling Liberal Party.
Yeah.
There's an election this coming Monday. The ruling Liberal Party is all in on the LGBT.
Okay, they're just like him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they were ahead of the curve. This is what made Jordan Peterson famous.
I got you.
That and his suits.
Well, we shall return momentarily with more of today's issues on American Family Radio. Stay with us.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
If God could speak,
what would he say? The Bible subjects itself to historical verification.
He says, we saw this. We go to the Bible wanting to hear what the living God has to say to us.
When God speaks, what does he say?
The God who speaks. Visit stream.afa.net. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth delivering remarks at Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania this morning. The Defense Secretary calling the opportunity to work for American soldiers the deployment of a lifetime and promising to strengthen the U.S. military worldwide.
From day one and each 100 of those days, our overriding objectives have been clear. Restoring the warrior ethos, rebuilding our military, and reestablishing deterrence.
A Minnesota prosecutor is under fire for giving a Tesla vandal a slap on the wrist.
Minnesota state employee Dylan Adams was arrested on potential felony charges for allegedly vandalizing at least 6 Tesla vehicles, causing $20,000 in damage. Though Hennepin County prosecutor Democrat Mary Moriarty is seeking a diversion program instead of charges, allowing Adams to avoid prosecution and jail time. As Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara in a statement says his officers did their job and that any frustration related to the charging decision should be directed solely at the DA's office. Federal investigators are now also looking into the case. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
California is set to release a Mexican illegal alien convicted of killing 2 teenagers in a 2021 DUI crash. Border czar Tom Homan says the release is unacceptable.
He's been deported several times, which means he's a felon. Re-entry the country at the form of deportation is a felony. We will prosecute him and we will deport him. I'll make that commitment. I'll work with Secretary Norton to make sure that happens.
The Supreme Court hearing arguments yesterday on whether parents can opt their children out of lessons on gender and sexuality. The original case coming from Montgomery County, Maryland, where parents claim their kids were reading books on various social issues, including LGBTQ subjects. Education Secretary Linda McMahon with a reaction to the case.
Well, I'm not sure what the Supreme Court will do. I think it's a little hard to always guess, but they seem certainly to, at least in their comments, be on the side of parents, as I clearly am, and I think the Department of Education is, for parental rights.
The University of Louisville agreed to pay a $1.6 million settlement after it fired a professor because he expressed his opposition to so-called transgenderism. Bronson Woodruff has more.
AFN talked with Travis Barham, Senior Counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom. He explained how it all started.
The University of Louisville hired Dr. Josephson in 2003, I believe, to run their Division of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. And he did a superb job turning the program around, giving it a national reputation. He did such a good job that for 3 years in a row, he earned perfect marks on his annual evaluations.
But it was not to last.
All this changed in the fall of 2017 when he spoke at the Heritage Foundation outlining his concerns about how gender dysphoria is often treated in children. As soon as he expressed his views, saying that we need to explore what's causing this confusion in children rather than rushing them into medical treatments, some university ideologues worked hand in hand with outside activist groups to end Dr. Josephson's career.
Dr. Josephson was demoted within a few weeks. He was harassed, and ultimately he was fired. Barham explained that because of that, Josephson was unable to return to academia. But Barham said it ended well.
After a 6-year legal battle, the university settled this case by paying him almost $1.6 million. They ended his career by harassing him and demoting him and ultimately firing him. But he's continuing to speak out on these issues of gender dysphoria.
Barham said the university should have respected his free speech rights from the beginning. Barham said his team hopes this case will serve as a wake-up call to public universities that if they decide to violate the free speech rights of their faculty members, it can and will be very expensive. I'm Bronson Woodruff.
Florida Attorney General James Uthmeyer filing a lawsuit against the social media platform Snapchat this week. He says he has evidence that minors are being exposed to online predators through this app.
12 and 13-year-olds, they're not allowed to access these applications in Florida. Older teenagers, 14 and 15, can use them so long as there's parental consent and that parents can log in and figure out what protocols they can use to help monitor and supervise their kids.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
I'll do some stand-up comedy. Abe will do some preaching. Tim will MC the whole thing, and I'm really excited about it. The Weekend with AFA is a chance for our supporters to get better acquainted with the people and ministry you're supporting.
It's a Weekend with AFA, Thursday, October 2nd through Saturday, October 4th in Tupelo, Mississippi. Speakers will include Abraham Hamilton III, Jenna Ellis, Tim Barton, Tim Wildman, and more. Register at afa.net/weekend.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildman, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening. We got another 25 minutes of sterling radio.
Sterling.
Huh?
That ups the pressure a little bit.
Sterling.
You have to be sterling.
Like silver.
Yeah, I know.
Silver sterling.
No, I'm going to have to up my game.
That's what I'm talking about. I like your attitude, Ed.
Yes, sir.
Because you want to get better
I do.
every day.
I
You want to be progressive.
I want to be sterling. I've been more on the copper level up to now. I'm going to try to go to sterling.
We're going to have to take back this word progressive. I don't like the way that
I like what Abe does.
The
He
liberals-
says regressive.
they're regressive. We're progressive.
Yeah.
You don't like it either?
I don't. It's been tainted.
Okay.
It's like I'm sorry. I don't mean it's like the word gay. That used to be, don you now your gay apparel.
Yeah.
I'm not donning any gay apparel
I don't
anymore
blame you.
because
No,
the
you're
word
straight
means
as an
something
arrow.
different.
You know what I'm saying?
It means something different.
So the world's changed, Ed.
Yeah, so I can't use progressive either.
So no gay, no progressive.
Yeah.
What else? What other words have we lost?
That
you don't even want to take back.
I don't know. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but
I was hearing somebody on the radio yesterday talk about, it would have. They did this because of the Klan, and he said, "Wait a minute, the Klan is in group, as in tribe, not as in Ku Klux Klan."
That's Steve Paisley Jordan.
Yeah, hey,
Good morning,
everybody.
Steve. How you doing, brother?
that is a good word.
Yeah.
A good example of that.
Brad Jackson with us here too. Mm-hmm. We're all a Klan here. Is that appropriate?
Ooh, no, we can't. We can't do that either.
We can't.
No, we can't use that word
because why?
There's folks out there who already think we're part of the Klan. We can't.
Yeah, but that's a Southern Poverty Law Center. They're in. If they. Anyway, probably need to move on right here.
Yeah. And by the way, there's nothing funny about the Ku Klux Klan.
No.
Seriously, folks.
No.
That was an abhorrent and demonic organization.
Yeah.
So, but we are having a little fun at the use of language.
Yes, we are.
How it can backfire.
Like the word mafia.
Like. We'll use that in a sentence where it's not referring to
right.
Tagliatelle.
Oh man, that's.
No, that's gratuitous.
Yes.
I would say.
It's like gratuitous violence.
I would just say that was a gratuitous stereotype of the Italian heritage.
That's like gratuitous violence in a Godfather movie.
I had to pay mafia at the county fair.
What?
Is that from The Godfather?
What is that?
No.
It's using mafia without referring to an Italian gang.
Oh no, you can't do it. I thought you were trying to.
I think that was the mafia scene from Gone with the Wind.
I'd hate for something bad to happen to your little business.
Was that Cool Hand Luke? What was that? Huh?
That might have been.
What we have here is a failure to communicate.
Communicate.
You're going to be sleeping with the catfish.
Going to be sleeping with the catfish.
That's a good line, Fred.
That is, Fred.
Be sleeping with the catfish.
And the gators.
The Southern Mafia.
Sleeping with the gators. Oh. Well, folks.
I got a good one. We need to reel this show back in. See what I'm saying? You see what I did there?
I saw it.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, Steve, what's your first
All right.
story there?
Well, the roiling continues in the Democrat Party. They just can't seem to figure out where they're going, what their identity is, and more fallout from that. We have just learned that Senator Dick Durbin from Illinois, who's the number 2 man in the Senate, is not going to run for re-election.
Number 2 man for the Democrats.
For the Democrats, yeah, right. Yeah. Sorry. And he's not going to run for re-election. Add to that, there was a poll that they just put out. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is leading Chuck Schumer by double digits in a new head-to-head poll of the 2028 New York primary if AOC runs for Senate.
Wow. Really?
Yes.
What poll is that?
It's a
Siena College? Siena College? No.
Survey by the liberal firm Data for Progress.
Okay.
Never heard of it.
First share of the Politico. 55% of Democrats' likely voters say they supported and lean toward AOC, 36% towards Chuck Schumer. So the old guard is kind of moving out. All the new guard is like AOC and company, the really, really radicals. Didn't we just go through 4 years of this and got sick and tired of it? And so we kicked
4
them
years
out?
of what?
Of woke, of AOC type.
Yeah,
government?
but they are doubling down, as we see.
I know, but
with the El Salvador situation and Democrats flying down there to give
save the day,
give an MS-13 gang leader a pedicure.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm not sure what's in Dick Durbin's head. He is 80 years old. So it could very well be that he's just exhausted.
Well, that's just the second quarter in Congress.
Okay, so now he's been in office since 96.
44 years.
Yeah. So, or this could be a sign that the establishment Democrats see the handwriting on the wall, that the party is being taken over by the woke crowd, and they don't want to be humiliated by losing an election. Like if Dick Durbin got primaried, maybe he figures he could be booted out, and that'd be more humiliating. So if that is the case, I would look for Chuck Schumer maybe to follow suit here.
Old timers, Democrats like Doug Schoen, longtime advisor, Democratic Party. We have a cut of him talking about this AOC Schumer poll this morning. Cut 12.
My party has moved so far to the left, both in reaction to Donald Trump's first term and now the second term, that there's anger. There's a desire also for a new generation of leadership, which AOC reflects. And Chuck Schumer has been in politics, I think, since about 1978 or 80. That's many, many years, 40-odd years. And I think there's a desire for a change. He is a master politician. I don't count him out. But AOC could be a presidential candidate in 2026 or could run against Senator Schumer. She's formidable in either role.
Wow.
That's Doug Schoen. He's been around a long time. He goes back to Clinton years.
Yeah.
Dick Durbin is getting out of politics for the same reason that Nick Saban got out of college football. The game around him had changed so much, he just didn't want to deal with it anymore.
Didn't want to deal with it. That's interesting. That Schoen quote that we just played, he is admitting that his party has moved so far to the left. And we did say, I think we said it on this show, that Donald Trump is almost like the catalyst for all of this.
Yeah.
When he was first elected in 2016 and now reelected in 2024, it's making the Democratic Party show itself in all its debauchery in terms of its policies. So he's admitting that the party has moved so far to the left, but is admitting that someone like AOC is formidable to the establishment Democrats. That is also quite an admission.
And what he is admitting also, it's moved far, far to the left, and it ain't coming back.
Right. That's true.
what he's saying. It's not coming back.
Well, if you see Schumer either say he's not going to run for re-election or get beat, and you have Dick Durbin, the number 2, and these aren't the only ones from the establishment that are stepping back from the game. That is an indication that the foot soldiers of the Democratic Party are in the process of taking the party. And listen, a lot of the people who would support that are young people. This is where you get these poll results, 55% or whatever, who are okay with violence against Trump supporters, or who applaud the young guy who shot the pharmaceutical CEO, the healthcare CEO. This is getting a little bit on the scary side if you're a middle of the road, long time regular Democratic liberal.
Well, and my question is that wing of the Democrat Party going to be able to convince more than half the country that they need a shot at governing? Back to DEI pilots, back to all of these, woke things that we just got rid of after Biden, plus all the Democrat economic disasters, giveaways. This country is not able financially to survive another Democrat administration. They just
I would say my opinion is at this point, no, they are not going to convince a majority of Americans. Look, I saw a video posted on X. It was some young lady, I don't know, she was 30 years old or whatever, and she was complaining about what Doge was doing, and she said, it's the taxpayer's responsibility to take care of me. She was talking about her food and housing. She said that it's the taxpayer's responsibility to give everyone a house.
Yeah.
And I thought, if this is the way a lot of these young people think, maybe the AOC crowd is going to be able to convince half the country. I don't know.
Then they have to change it, or else they become irrelevant. And how does Gavin Newsom and his pretending to be going to the center fit into this too? Because he's trying to carve out a lane.
Yeah.
I don't believe it for a second, but at least he's making the right noises about coming to the center and having a more moderate Democrat Party.
All right, let's move on. Next story.
Okay. Christine Ohm was having dinner in Washington, D.C. She was having, actually, with her family. She was at the Capitol Burger joint in Mount Vernon Square with her grandkids, and a man wearing an N95 mask walked up and stole her purse, according to NBC Washington, from under the table. Had $3,000 of cash in, credit cards, her DHS identification passport in the bag. Here's the kicker. Her Secret Service detail was in the restaurant less than 20 feet away. Now, they've released a picture of this guy, but they're not releasing it to the public yet. They're asking for help finding him.
My guess is that her purse, her something in that purse has a tracker in it. That would be my expectation, that if you're someone in the Trump administration, if you're a woman in the Trump administration, you're the secretary of whatever department you're the secretary of, you got a purse, you have an air tag or something in it.
What's a Secret Service agent doing?
Yeah.
Because she had Secret Service protection. This is the Secretary of
Homeland Security.
Homeland Security. You can't make this stuff up. It's like an SNL skit.
It sounds like they were chowing down, thinking we're in an enclosed space.
We've got Secret Service protection.
We got Secret Service here, and they weren't paying attention. This is the kind of unexpected thing the Secret Service is supposed to be looking
you're having,
for.
You're having dinner at a restaurant, and you got $3,000.
Yeah.
In your purse. That purse ain't coming off me.
Yes.
That purse is in my lap.
Yeah.
Huh? Because
first of all, I'm disturbed that you would have a purse, but I get the idea.
Times have changed. Okay, if you're not, men carry what do you call them?
What do they call them?
Man purse.
Man purses.
Man bag. Yeah, right.
Man
bags. They carry those things in Europe. Have you not
Only
seen
if
these
you're
people?
French.
That's what I'm
You're
saying.
a French guy.
Oh, I'm just listen.
This is hard to figure, isn't it? How does this happen?
There was a separate incident a couple weeks earlier where in the same area another purse was stolen. I read that. I don't know exactly what it has to do.
There you go. Should have had a briefing on that.
Yeah.
Be prepared. There's a purse thief in this nearby area.
I just suggest.
Anyway, it sounds unbelievable that the Secretary of Homeland Security for the United States of America, with Secret Service protection and $3,000 in her purse, cash,
and family sitting around.
Yeah.
How does that even happen?
Yeah.
And
if this was in Moscow, and this was a high-ranking official in Putin's government,
right,
who had Secret Service around him, that guy would be dead.
Yeah.
That guy who, if he went for a purse from that high-ranking,
yeah.
that guy would be dead.
Yeah. So did they catch this person yet?
No.
No.
Not yet.
Well, listen, this has not been a good year for the Secret Service or the last
No, it hasn't.
12 months, 6 months, whatever you want to say. Right. We had a presidential candidate, all those kind of things with Trump, assassination attempts. But for Kristi Noem to have a purse stolen, I mean, I'm wondering, these Secret Service agents must have been on their phones. They must have been, eating.
Somebody wasn't watching.
We're not watching that table.
Chris Woodward had the thought that maybe the path between the Secret Service and the table was too steep.
Too steep.
Oh,
because
of the roof. Too
sloped.
They couldn't quite make it.
It's not been a good year for the Secret Service.
It has not.
Next story.
The birth rate in the United States is 1.66 births per woman.
Per couple?
2022. Well, per woman.
Okay.
What else could it be?
Single moms.
Well, yeah, okay. I wasn't trying to start anything. They usually go per couple because you could be a single mom, but you had to have a guy involved.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, I wasn't trying to start anything.
Anyway,
go ahead to move on.
Nor was I.
No.
The relevant number, the relevant data point is 1.66 births.
Yes.
Replacement rate is 2.1%. 2.1. That means that accounts for the
replacing what?
The
man and the
woman,
yeah.
And a little more for growth in those that we lose.
Yeah, the 0.1%, is for infant mortality.
Infant mortality, and that's just to keep even. And we're not the only place in the world where birth rates are way down. This is a big, huge issue for Elon Musk, by the way. He's brought it up several times.
Well, he's doing his part.
Yeah, he is. He is. But it has come to the attention of Donald Trump. Americans may soon, according to Not the Bee, Americans may soon have more reasons to have children than just to experience a deep sense of fulfillment and wonder. How about $5,000 baby bonus that Donald Trump has said it sounds good to him? Would that work? You think $5,000 is incentive enough for a couple to?
Okay, first of all, let me just say this. If that is going to happen, I want this policy literally grandfathered in. Okay, I want $10,000. My wife and I had 2 kids. We're doing
it's like student loans. We're going to go way back.
And we lost one in between the 2 we had due to miscarriage. So that's the 2.1%. We did exactly what we were supposed to do. No, I don't think this has not worked in other countries, in Europe, for example, or Japan. Here's the reason, I think, is because money does sound like it's a explanation for why couples are not having children, but the reality is I think it has to do with worldview. If you do not have a Christian view of humanity and human nature and the future, you don't really want to pass. You don't want to pass your faith on or your values on, and this is why these kinds of Russia's tried this, and it's not working. So I also think it encourages women to have babies out of wedlock, because if you can have $5,000 for 4 kids,
we tried that in the Great Society.
Yeah, I just don't think this is going to.
Let me ask you this:
I got another data point for you.
So did you say the birth rate in the United States now is what?
1.66, I think.
And we have to have 2.1 to maintain?
Yes.
Or to have replacement numbers?
Yeah.
Well, I just knew that is a big problem. And I'm not, hopefully, that will correct itself, so to speak. In Japan, they got their zero birth rate. I mean, am I right? I mean, look at the birth rate in Japan. I mean, it's like
one of the lowest.
It's
like
one of the lowest. They're saying in 100 years there's going to be no Japanese people.
In 2023, it's 1.2.
Okay,
and its birth rate in 2024 fell to a record low, a 5% decline from the previous year.
How about this for a data point? In the Muslim world, the birth rate is 3.1.
Right. But that is not for Muslims in developed countries. That is for Muslims in Muslim majority countries.
It's also a stated reason, purpose in the United States and other countries. This is their jihad by birth.
Yeah.
They basically want to, I mean, they are poised to increase. Their tribe is increasing and everybody else is decreasing. And that just can't be good for
the
what
same
we've
is
seen
true
lately.
The same is true in Europe, especially Western Europe.
Yep.
The birth rates. Canada, probably same thing, I would think.
Same thing. Yep.
So I think the value of having children has diminished. I say the value. I don't mean monetarily. I'm talking about the desire to get married and have multiple children and, and carry on humanity.
Yeah.
I think, and we're speaking broadly and generally here, but to Ed's point, I think the worldview among a lot of people, younger people, has changed. And a lot of them are waiting. I'm not judging this as there's nothing inherently wrong or immoral or evil about this. I'm just going to give you an analysis. They're waiting till they're in their, waiting later to get married, and then many of them are choosing not to get married. Probably a higher percentage than ever before. Or if they do, they just want dogs, or aquarium.
Yep.
They don't, huh? They don't want the responsibility of raising children.
Yeah.
Now, I think a lot of that's rooted. Again, we're speaking broadly and generally, because there's a lot of single people who want to get married. They want to have kids. They want to have a family, but they haven't met the right person. So it's no fault of their own. But I'm saying but that's still a reality that a lot of people are waiting to get married till later. But I do think that I'm going to use this word. There's a lot of selfishness out there that used to not be there in our culture. And so it's me, take care of me. And I don't need no stinking kids around keeping me from doing what I want to do and having what I want to have.
Yep.
That mentality is in Western civilization right now.
Yep.
And it's also in Eastern civilization. I think we mentioned Japan and other countries. Fred?
Well, I think, too, it's a result of the feminist movement, which redefined what success was for women.
Yes.
It redefined it, saying, women, you need to be out there and become corporate leaders and climb the ladder and do all of that. And if you don't do that, women, you're a failure. So staying home and having kids was all of a sudden defined by the feminist movement as you're not doing what you're designed to do, and that is to be the corporate CEO. Not, again, to your point, Tim, not that it's wrong for a woman to head a company.
Right.
But women are the only ones who can get pregnant.
Yeah.
Here we go. I knew Ed would see the light.
After she's cooked dinner, she could be the CEO, right?
What I was saying is you can't shift this and say, well, why don't men stay home and have the babies? Well, men can't get pregnant. Right. I was trying to have a serious.
You are so nice.
I know a lot of men that cook dinner too, by the way.
2018.
And they like it that way.
I was trying to make a serious point, like I normally do.
Yes.
Did you succeed?
Not in this crowd.
That question will hang over us for the next 24 hours. Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure.
Thanks to Chris Woodward, Ed Vitagliano,
Jenna
Brett
Ellis.
Jackson, Jenna Ellis, Brent Creeley, our producer. We appreciate you listening to today's issues. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
And my father, your great-grandfather, fought in World War II.
Really?
He was a gunner on the big ship out in the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Your great-grandmother